Learn how fundraising totals in the Democratic primary for governor may show a much closer race than pundits originally expected. MSU's Dr. David Parker talks about that.
Also, find out how a huge new change in Montana marijuana laws set to take effect in just a few days, and learn what it means for users and marijuana businesses.
Just ahead of 6:30, we're back here on your Thursday edition of Montana This Morning. Caitlin Corbett, Chet Lehman, and Matt Elwell. Got to get the Montana This Morning in there once again, right?
Subliminal advertising at its best. There you go.
Right.
That's what we like to see. And it is going to be a beautiful Thursday.
Oh, it's going to be beautiful all the way around. Sunshine abound for the early morning. It is a little cool, especially when you factor in the wind. Right now, the temperature at Bozeman, Yellowstone sitting at 42, 48 in Livingston, 38 in Butte. Into the morning, the temperature here at the studio close to 50 degrees, believe it or not.
Wow.
And the wind has let up just a touch here in the last 5 minutes or so. I'm sure it'll pick up just in time for me to go out to the Billion Auto Weather. Looks like the TrueView forecast pretty quiet for today. We'll see some afternoon clouds. Again, the daytime highs into the 70s, even mid 70s for parts of the area for today. Tomorrow, 80s, and we could see some records set in the area for daytime highs by Saturday. We'll talk more about your forecast, of course, in just a few minutes.
All right, thank you very much, Matt. There's some big news that could affect your ballot for next Tuesday's primary.
That's right. The Montana Supreme Court says the current rule on counting absentee ballots will stand for the all-mail ballot primary election next week. That means to be counted, a ballot must be received at the county election office by 8 p.m. election day. That's next Tuesday. Now, the court's 5-2 decision blocked last week's order from a district judge that said ballots need only to be postmarked by next Tuesday to be counted. The Supreme Court said it will hear an appeal later and decide whether it should stand for the general election.
And with 1 week to go until ballots are counted, the race for Montana governor is down to the wire. Both the Republican and Democratic nominations are up for grabs. MTN's Jay Cohn zeroes in on the race between Whitney Williams and Mike Cooney.
Who are you picking next Tuesday in the Democratic governor's race? Newcomer Whitney Williams or tried and true Mike Cooney? With virtually no public polling in this race, even the experts don't know what to expect.
You know, I absolutely have no clue. I mean, there's been no public polling in that race, so that doesn't give me anything to go by. The only other thing I can look at is the amount of money being spent, which is about equal on both sides.
Both in terms of spending and fundraising, the Cooney-Williams race is tight. And with the Williams camp buoyed recently by a $700,000 ad buy from Emily's List, it's getting tighter.
They dropped $600,000, $700,000, which doesn't sound like a lot of money. We're used to these $50, $60, $70 million Senate races. But in a primary, in a time where media's television ads are still relatively cheap, and there hasn't been a ton of money spent in the primary, it's been about equal, that could maybe put enough of a finger on the scale help Whitney Williams at the last minute.
Oftentimes you can get a feel for the outcome of a race by looking at fundraising. So here you go, the latest numbers as of mid-May. Williams has raised the most, eclipsing the $1 million mark. But just 30% of that comes from Montana. Half of her dollars come from out of state, as much as 21% from California, 14% from Washington State. And she's chipped in $55,000 of her own money. Mike Cooney has raised over $886,000 as of mid-May, with more than 8,000 separate donations. And when you add in the small non-itemized donations, as much as 3/4 of his cash comes from Montana. He's also getting money from all across the country, with small $5 and $10 donations from nearly every state, thanks to Act Blue, a national Democratic fundraising group. And another wild card this year, the all-mail-in election. And thanks to the pandemic, an evolving campaign face-off on social media.
My daughter, who's 9, plays a lot of games on the internet. She gets Whitney Williams ads a lot. That might show you a little bit that they've maybe done a better job of getting out there. On the other hand, my 9-year-old daughter's not voting.
Tomorrow night, who's winning the Cooney-Williams race in terms of endorsements? In Billings, I'm Jay Cohn reporting for MTN News.
Shifting gears just a bit now, a major change coming to Montana's medical marijuana system next week, as patients will be officially untethered, free to use any provider in the state. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian looks at what this step will mean for cardholders and for dispensaries.
For years, Montana patients who get medical marijuana from a dispensary have had to choose a single provider to go to. Provider J.J. Thomas says he's never believed that was the best option.
No one wants to eat at McDonald's every day over and over and over and over again when, 1,000 different places make hamburgers, right? So it's the same with medication or anything else. People want variety. They want to shop in different places. They want accessibility.
Thomas owns the Higher Standard dispensaries, with locations in Helena, Missoula, Butte, and Dillon. He says he's pleased to see the state untethering cardholders, allowing them to buy from any licensed provider in the state. The Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services has announced it will implement the change next Tuesday, June 2nd. Last year, the Montana legislature approved a medical marijuana reform bill that called for untethering patients by the end of June. DPHHS leaders say it has taken time to make the necessary rule changes and system upgrades.
Getting that tracking in place that allows a provider to know how much a cardholder has purchased previous to walking in their door, without also giving that provider details of all the purchases that were made at other vendors or other providers.
Leaders say the change should remove some of the obstacles that may keep patients from getting their medication.
Obviously, these patients have developed relationships with their providers, and where those relationships are good, I don't foresee those changing, but it does allow people who are traveling, if they have to have an extended period of time where they're spending time with family in another part of the state, they have the ability to access medicine if they need it.
Thomas says he's concerned some providers may not be able to increase their production fast enough to meet demand, but overall he sees untethering as a change for the better.
But I truly believe that if you've been doing a great job all these years and you've been taking care of people, there's no reason people aren't going to continue to shop you. I feel like everyone's going to be just fine, and it's the best thing that could happen to the industry in a very long time.
In Helena, Jonathan Amberian, MTN News.
Time now 6:36. Officials with Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks say they won't try to find the bear involved in the attack in the Spanish Peaks area on Monday because that bear only reacted to being surprised. MTN's John Miller has the latest on the investigation and some bear safety reminders.
Today I talked to Morgan Jacobson from Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks about the bear attack in Big Sky on Monday and what you could do to keep yourself safe.
Finding a bear in this area is not unexpected. Big Sky in the Spanish Peaks area is well within occupied grizzly bear habitat.
On Monday, a male in his 60s was riding his bike on a now closed private trail when he ran into a grizzly bear.
A lot of this investigation is still ongoing. There's a lot we don't know. We do know that this mountain biker was alone at the time of the attack, and fortunately they did survive and they were able to get medical attention.
A grizzly bear reacting defensive in nature when surprised is typical.
Sometimes the nature of certain activities that are deliberately fast-moving or quiet, such as hunting or mountain biking or trail running, puts recreationists at an increased risk for surprising a bear.
Interactions between people and wildlife is not uncommon, and being tucked away due to COVID-19 has not increased the presence of animals in certain areas.
Interactions between people and wildlife is on the rise because we do have a growing population, especially here in Gallatin County.
Lastly, there are a few things to remember.
Staying on trails is a big thing. That does a lot of good for wildlife habitat. Remember to carry bear spray, travel in groups wherever possible, and just be aware of your surroundings.
In Bozeman, John Miller, MTN News.
And the man who was attacked is still in the hospital and has not yet spoken about the incident. Well, when you've got to go, you've got to go, but a worldwide pandemic has us rethinking just how clean those public restrooms really are, and now businesses must adapt.
Businesses are considering how they'll need to change up their restrooms amid the pandemic.
I do think that most people would agree that in the past, even pre-COVID, that public restrooms tended not to be the cleanest place in most public venues. And this is a real concern given the way germs can be transmitted.
Across the country, some businesses have been doing quick fixes like taping off sinks or urinals to encourage distancing. Others have been changing up how often the restrooms get cleaned. McDonald's, for example, wants its franchisees to clean their restrooms every 30 minutes. Steve Swaffer, a professor of social work and president of the American Restroom Association, thinks having the cleanings documented would give us all peace of mind.
A lot of these public bathrooms in the better places have these charts, and they tell you when the last time was that the bathroom was cleaned. I think that should become standard practice, so people know they're cleaning the bathroom every half hour, every hour, once.
Okay, looks like we had a little problem there with that one, but it's a good thing to consider, and you'll notice in a lot of public places like gyms, they've installed no-touch dryers, no-touch paper towels, things like that. So a lot of places are definitely making changes, and it's just the new way of life, I guess, we're going to have to adapt to.
That's one of those things that I know that a lot of people are concerned about going out and using the public facilities in that. So.
And I guess a chart would help you kind of be like, oh, okay, it's been cleaned recently.
Most truck stops have that.
Yes.
Restrooms in a truck stop have all of those things. You know that
fascinating.
JCJ or whoever it was initial cleaned it here 25 minutes ago. So interesting. 6:40, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, one of the main concerns in the law enforcement community is how to keep police cars clean during the pandemic. Ford has a new idea. They're going to burn the germs away. This is really interesting. We'll show you how that works. But first, let's check in with Tony DeCopel.
Good morning. Ahead on CBS this morning, violent clashes in Minneapolis. We're there with the latest protests over the death of George Floyd. They've led to crime and now also more death. Also, new concerns about the accuracy of coronavirus antibody tests. The question is, should they be used to help determine who returns to work? Plus, how coronavirus is exposing the digital divide among minorities, including some Latino students. And only on CBS this morning, filmmaker Ava DuVernay shows how her award-winning work is being used for a larger conversation about social justice. We'll see you at 7.